as well in Westminster just to even it up, Vanessa, you know?
I didn't see what she was wearing today. I didn't notice.
Well, I think we're now live, actually. Good evening and welcome to Broadsheet on the Telly. My name is John Preposterous Ryan. You're very welcome, Broadsheet readers. Sorry, 1 second. I have the... yes, hello.
We're live, people.
We are live. We're live. We're live. Very sorry about that. Big welcome to celebrity accountant Vanessa Foran.
Hi, everyone.
A big hello to Neil Curran, our producer. Hello, Neil.
Hello, everyone. Happy Brexit.
Happy Brexit Day. A big hello to Kieran Tierney.
Hi, hello.
Hello, Kieran. In Galway. We're missing a few people, but they're going to be joining us over the next while, I hope. I've sent them all the link anyway. So, Kieran, can I come straight to you? I just want to sort of straight on Brexit. It's been quite a day, isn't it? Kieran?
Because we don't know anything about Brexit, Neil. Or
What's Brexit?
You've been following developments, Kieran.
Well, quite 2.5 years at this stage. I think people are getting Brexit fatigue now, but it's incredible, isn't it? It's just dragging on so much, and it's dominating the agenda so much. It's crazy, you know. It's kind of mad to see Britain kind of almost imploding in front of our eyes, you know, the way the whole political system is falling apart there, and people so angry on the Remain side, on the Brexit side. It's so hard to find a compromise, and the European Union kind of scratching its head and saying, what are we dealing with here, guys? You know, we have a deal. What are you doing, you know?
Yeah, so, and just away from the kind of sort of the details of it, what about the theatre of it, the drama? I mean, Vanessa mentioned that Theresa May had performed quite well today, or you were very impressed with her, Vanessa, were you? I
was really impressed with when she came out of Downing Street last night, the way all the cameras were waiting. It was between 7 and 8 o'clock, you know, and she came out and she delivered an incredible speech. And now I don't know who it was that's shouting. I saw on Twitter it might have been Boris in the background. That was an incredible speech after apparently she was ripped apart in the cabinet room, and she still had the herewithal and the steadiness and the composure to deliver that speech. And I would just tell anybody to try and catch that speech that she gave. You know, I suppose they're all words that we'd heard before, and I mean, there was no great oratory in it, but the sheer composure and the steadiness to deliver it at the end of yesterday, at the time, and every camera. I mean, we never got to see the bank of cameras that must have been on her on Downing Street last night, you know. And then there was all the heckling in the background. So I think it was one person that's going to come out of this really well, regardless of what her position is this time next week, you know, whether she's just a mere backbencher again. Theresa May's stock has gone up big time globally, the way she's handled this. And I was trying to start a conspiracy theory that herself and the Queen have sat down and hatched this between them, because, I mean, England, Britain, UK, the Commonwealth, your leaders are 2 women. And they've outstood you all. They've outstood all the fellas throwing stones at them and firing names and throwing tantrums, from Boris to Mogg to everybody. They've seen them all out. Well, and I do think Theresa May has handled herself very, very well. The whole thing has been an absolute joke today, the resignations. I mean, there was a guy resigned today. I didn't even know he was a minister.
Well, the names are quite sweet, aren't they? Serena, like Esther and...
yeah, and it's a good day for the DUP. I don't know why they just don't shut up. I mean, they don't even have a mandate. And I was tweeting this today, so if it feels like I'm repeating myself, I apologise. But, like, Arlene's own constituency didn't even vote to stay. I mean, they were substantially Remain, like 58.5%.
Don't you think? I just want to bring Neil into this as well. Don't you think this is drama? Like, Stanley Wilson is just playing a role today.
Oh yeah.
Like, he's just feeding his base, and they'll come down. You know, they'll come down to compromising, and I mean, this is This is for the cameras, basically. And Neil, were you following developments?
Yeah. I mean, my theory is that this was, well, either Theresa May is an incredibly clever or she's incredibly stupid. I'm erring on the sign that she could be incredibly clever. I'm getting the impression, given if you look at what was presented to Westminster, this is what she was talking about months ago. So you got to ask the question, well, why didn't she have this, ready months ago? Why wasn't this presented months ago? And what makes me think about the timing of all this, because it's so close to crunch time. And the second thing with it is, if this is quite a genius move, the Remainers and the Brexiteers hate what's being presented. They both, so the one thing they have in common is this shitty Brexit deal. What's lost on the Brexiteers is they think that you can have your cake and eat it, that you can leave the EU yet have all the same good things that the EU brings us without having to deal with the challenging issues like immigration and that. And we all know that can't be the case. You're in Europe or you're not, and if you're not, that's not going to be a better off position than somebody who is in Europe. So so she's presented this document that everyone hates. So it could be that she knew her political career was going to be over, because she was damned if she did, she's damned if you don't. So maybe her thinking all along was to force a second referendum. She's left it till the last minute. She came across incredibly well in Westminster today. And there's talk again of potentially a second referendum. Now there's huge obstacles to overcome with that. Yeah. But if you think about the time frame, if you throw your mind back to Nigel Farage and all the promises that were made, enough time has passed now that people see that's all horseshit. There's no money going to the NHS. The deal shows that you're aligned with European policies, but you're no longer sitting at the table making decisions. Jobs are already being hemorrhaged from the UK. There's manufacturing. There's companies that are holding back on investing in the UK.
Yeah. Okay. Just. I mean, you're a pro-Brexiteer, or you're anti-Brexit, and have been so. We're familiar with the arguments at this stage.
I kind of think you're giving Theresa May a bit more credit than she deserves. I think the whole thing is such a mess within her cabinet, and it's kind of exposing huge fault lines. Like, I've been following very closely, kind of the last year or so, the demonization of Jerry Corbyn has been going on, when it's the Tories that are the mess and they are the government, in the British media. It's kind of crazy.
Corbyn lost his way, though. Do you know? Would you not think he's lost his way in the last 6 months?
I think it's a messy. I mean, if you had a decent Labour Party, they should be kind of capitalising so much on what a total mess their government is in, how divided they are. And going back to the DUP, Vanessa mentioned Twitter. I was out in town at a meeting for a couple of hours, but earlier on today I saw a tweet which I thought summed it up very well, that the DUP have been offered this better deal than anybody else, and they're going, no, we want this, we don't want this, we want to be in the crap with all the rest of the UK. It's like somebody's offering you a better deal than everybody else, and you go, no, we want to be the same as them. It kind of makes it's crazy stuff all around.
Vanessa, you wanted to say something there? Vanessa, I think your mic is down.
Sorry, folks. I partly forgot what I was actually going to say. But you were mentioning about Tories and the cabinet being poor. In one way, they're a mirror of the Fine Gael cabinet, in that they're stuck for numbers and the talent isn't as available to Theresa May, and same with Leo. And I've said it on the show before, John. I mean, who's he got to pick from to fill a cabinet? And Theresa May's the same. They don't have the numbers, the brilliance and the scale coming in. I mean, you have to wonder, who is she just throwing darts at the board now to try and fill a cabinet? I think there's a bit of that going on, Kieran, as well, that the brilliant people to have around you, even if you disagree with them, you have to accept that some people are capable, and you don't always work with the people you like. You work with the people that can do the job. Well, that would be my policy.
I think actually, Vanessa, there's a big contrast between how the Irish cabinet have handled this over the last year or two and the British cabinet. I wouldn't be a huge fan of the government in Ireland, but I think they've really, worked very well on Brexit. They've been strong when they've been needed to be strong. They've been compromising, and they're trying to allay the fears of unionists, and they've handled it very well. And because we could be let's not forget, we could be just dumped asunder by.
Possibly,
I mean, we're a little irrelevant in the greater scheme of Europe.
Yeah,
you
we
know
are.
what I mean? Like, and throughout the campaign in Britain, the Irish border was hardly ever mentioned, and yet, like, we've got our European allies to kind of stand up for the border communities and say that, you know, they're not accepting this hard border, whatever. You know, I think our cabinet have actually worked it way better than the British cabinet.
Yes, but you see, Kieran, our cabinet, and historically in Ireland, we've been more pure Europe. We've been pure EEC. We would have gone in there 10 years ahead of England, of the UK, in the 60s.
If we could have.
And we've been far more embedded into the whole EU setup.
Well, we voted against 2 referenda and then had to go and change.
Yeah, but if you look at the numbers, there's a lot more paddies working within the European infrastructure per head than most of them. Do you know what I mean? There's been lads in jobs there for 20, 30 years. Then the Department of Foreign Affairs then is a lot more skilled to deal with both Europe and the border, far more than the British Foreign Secretary.
Yeah,
and that department. So they're a lot more skilled indeed. And same with our security forces. They're a lot more skilled with dealing with border issues and having strategic. All our departments here in the Republic have a lot more relationships with cross-border communities and with departments in the UK.
So are you putting that down to Northern Ireland or Ireland?
Excuse me, Kieran.
Let Kieran speak.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, are you putting that down to Northern Ireland and Ireland being kind of a minor little pimple or irrelevance in the greater scheme of British politics? I didn't say that at all. No, but you know what I mean? Because, for example...
No, I'm not putting it down to that at all. I'm putting it down to that we've had a working relationship both with dealing with the border for a lot longer and dealing with UK administrators from agriculture to fisheries to even armed forces and security forces and even hospitals. We've had a share agreement going on with the NHS and the HSE prior for decades.
Okay.
So we've had that relationship, as well as we've always had a very strong, good relationship with Europe and the mechanisms and the bureaucracies and the different ranks and the different movements in there. And so when you say we've done very well, yes, and to be fair, Simon Coveney has done very well, and he has been a very, very good Minister for Foreign Affairs. And he comes from an agriculture background as well. So having been in that frame. So, I mean, to say, like, it's not by accident that we've managed this a bit better. And also, like, we've had the budget set aside to deal with Brexit way before the English put one in, the Westminster put one into theirs.
Yeah, well, I actually saw something on BBC, or I'm not sure, one of the British TV news channels about 6 weeks or 2 months ago from here in Galway with Simon Coveney, where it was a breakfast briefing for businesses in the west of Ireland, just briefing them about what Brexit, what it's going, and what are the consequences for businesses in your region. And there was a series of these around Ireland, and the British TV reporter was actually shocked that this was happening in Galway, that we were actually prepared that much, or that we were actually looking ahead to what consequences it will have, because he said in this report, there's nothing like this going on in Britain. You know, it's kind of mad. It's just heading blindly into the horizon, not knowing what the hell is coming, you know?
Yeah, you could measure it with foot and mouth, John and Kieran and Neil, right? When foot and mouth broke out, the Irish Department of Ag were 6 months ahead of the English. It was the Irish Border Patrol that stopped it here. We only had one incidence of foot and mouth here, and that was from a bit of bold behaviour, you know, passing cattle over and back. One instance. We shut down completely, and all the patrols were Irish, from the guards and the Department of Ag, hosing the cars and stopping it. You know, there's still foot and mouth in the UK, folks.
I want to move on, Kieran, because and just stay on Europe. You were at Luke Flanagan's meeting about the potential EU army, which is another aspect of, I suppose, if you were pro-Brexit, you'd be happy to be leaving if this is what the EU is kind of becoming.
Yeah, like, and actually, fair play to Luke Flanagan. He brought 4 independent TDs. He brought a couple academics, a green or an environmental left-wing MEP from Germany, all to Galway this time last week for a 3-hour talk, and got very little media coverage, but he's put he got 2 or 3 people to film it, so he put the whole thing up online, and the subject of it was, are we heading towards an EU army? And it's funny, you know, this perception that everybody is totally pro-European, like Catherine Connolly, who's an independent TD here in Galway, said she recalled this year a really bad day in the Dáil, which she didn't like at all, when the head of the European Commission, who's unelected, comes in and is treated so reverentially by all these Irish politicians who have been elected, you know.
Yeah.
So let's not forget that we're not all like we're wonderful Europeans. A lot of Irish people have issues over the bailout and how it was forced upon us, and you know, going back to that came from Europe, so let's not forget all that stuff. But what was very interesting, I found, and like, of course, I'm based in Galway, so it was handy for me that we had this on our doorstep. There was very little coverage of it, and how little there was last year when it went through the Dáil. It was more or less rushed through this PESCO agreement thing. Yeah. Now, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are saying, no, this is not necessarily leading to a European army. But only in the last week, we've had Macron in France, Merkel in Germany, and the European Commission themselves. So all 3 talking about a European army. Yeah. From what I've been vaguely aware of Ming going on about this from the Parliament, or I'd follow his social media or whatever. Like, when I started reading up a bit about it, I mean, they're talking about, I think, 6 times the budget of more than 6 times our current budget on military spending from Ireland, and it would be half our healthcare budget. And it's funny, I know somebody who was in A&E last night in Galway, went in at midnight with his mum. They left at 5:20 in the morning because the guy beside them told them, well, actually, I've been here since 4 p.m. So that the person next to them had been 13 hours without seeing a doctor in A&E. This is happening all the time. And it's funny, Ming was saying, I'm going to talk to the farmers, because that's his big constituency in this area. Tell them, you know, our agricultural budget is going to go down, because that's how you talk to people. I wrote a blog about this today. It's about money at the end of the day. Yeah. You know, are we a neutral country? Well, that's a whole other debate, but it's a debate we're not having, and we never seem to have. And people were kind of shocked that last year that something with such huge repercussions for this country, you know, going right back to World War II, and people can say, oh, we were a terrible country, we stayed out of World War II, but we were only a quarter of a century away from independence, and a very poor country. We had our reasons for, as the ex-colony, not for, I mean, were we really neutral anyway? But we don't have a debate about this. I know Michael D mentioned it during the presidential election. So it was quite amazing to hear the TDs, a German politician, an academic from DCU, all talking about this. It's a very serious thing now, this European army, you know. And when do we ever talk about it? I've heard very little about it since last December when it was in the Dáil, you know, and it just was rushed through apparently. And I think it's something we need to at least talk about. I mean, you know me, I've been down to the Shannon Watch protest just in the last weekend. Israeli military, or an American military plane, a huge one, landed both journeys to both going to and from Tel Aviv. Nobody checked it. Nobody knows what was on board. And we're supposedly neutral. We're not neutral like Switzerland is. But like we talk about Europe, I don't think everybody in Ireland has the same opinion of Europe. And in fact, I think a lot of us would agree with a lot of British people in a lot of ways that it's very unaccountable and undemocratic. We're an island people. Well, whether that means, you know, I disliked a lot of the Brexit debate because it was so jingoistic, and it's close our borders, get back our sovereignty, get the foreigners out, all that kind of stuff. That alienated a lot of people. There definitely needs to be a talk, though, about Europe and democracy.
One second, Vanessa. I just want to quickly go to Johnny, who's just arrived. Hello, Johnny. Johnny Keenan, who's with us in Kilkenny.
That's right. How are you, John?
How are you, Johnny? We missed
I lost them in transit, so I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can, yeah. Surround sound, loud and clear.
Okay. The video is a little off, but the sound is good. Okay.
Don't know how to do about that. I was working on the lighting there as well.
It's fine there, I think.
It's grand. No, you look great. You look great. The Orla blinds aren't fully visible in the background.
Yeah, I was seeing as Orla bowed out.
I know.
I've in solidarity, I reckon that we should kind of, keep the curtains closed on that one, so to speak.
Well, somebody did say they were all a Kylie curtains.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Because
I love that the lads know all of their
Vanessa didn't like
designs.
the last pair of curtains, so my wife was very offended, so she went out and supported local artist talent.
Oh, good. Well, Johnny, you're very welcome back. We were talking about Brexit. We're actually going into the EU army, and Vanessa was going to.
Well, the PESCO is totally up Johnny Street, but just if you don't mind, folks, about the EU, equality legislation and certain aspects of our taxation, we would have waited a lot longer only for the EU for that to come in, because up until the mid-90s, you still had a tax value that was classed as the unmarried mother's allowance. It was identical in value to the married man's allowance. It's now just called the single income allowance, single income household allowance, right? But the paddies have to be dragged kicking and screaming into that. John, you and I did our leaving cert the same year. You were able to apply for the guards that same year. You were able to apply for the Aer Lingus pilot training that year. I wasn't. So, just while you're trying to, remember that the EU brought all us into that. Now, we would have got there eventually. I'm not saying they are the only reason, but we still had to wait a bit longer for it.
Yeah, but Vanessa, I mean, we would have got there eventually. We probably
exactly.
Who knows? We could have even got there quicker.
But we didn't.
Well, we don't know that. I mean, we don't know what might have happened or what may have happened.
Yeah, but it was pushed. The influence came from pre-Maastricht at the time.
Okay, but we were never told about this EU army. You see, back when we were winning the Eurovision.
No, but I'm just putting it out there that there were some parts of.
No, but Vanessa, I don't
think
people are saying that the European Union is all bad. Far from it. You know what I mean? For example, I was in the States 3 weeks ago, and an Irish person said to me, because my friends who emigrated in the 90s to the States, they have maybe 13 days holiday in the year. They come back for a week, maybe at Christmas or whatever. And this person said, well, it's because of the EU that you have your 4 or 5 weeks holidays in the year. You're right. There are things that we take for granted, and we don't know what way, like some of those Tories, the future they envisage for Britain with their new trade deals and things like that. You could see them working away at workers' rights and things like that. I mean, we don't know what their long-term goals of people like Jacob Rees-Mogg is, but it's not the benefit of the working class.
It's not for you and I. Absolutely,
actually, Vanessa. I mean, it may become an opportunity for them to become, what Corbyn dreams of. I mean, there's no possibility of a government in Europe at the moment, in the EU, being anything but neoliberal.
It's very unfortunate. It is very unfortunate.
In the most vigorous way, like the most privatized. Anyway.
Yeah, but you see, Brexit is an excuse for taking City of London and London out and being there, literally running their own show. You can be sure Rees-Mogg and them, they don't give a shit about the northeast of England. We had Johnny's friend from Hull on. They've never even driven up there. They've never probably even been up there to protest or met people up there.
Can I bring Neil in? Neil, we're not letting you away now. We're without.
I know.
You're not camping us for the movies. You gotta. When Maastricht was happening, and when when the EU seemed like just an amazing thing in the early 90s or whatever, and they were just pouring money into Ireland, and as I say, we were winning the Eurovision on the trot, and it just
so we joined the EU.
Oh, is that why? Is that why we were winning, John?
No, it was just
so why are we coming last now?
No, that's another conspiracy theory for another day. But so we kept on winning the Eurovision. It was all good. I mean, the mission creep of a EU army wasn't even in a glimmer in Jack Delors's eyes at the time, and now it looks like it's going to happen. Actually, I mean, as Kieran says, Macron and Merkel were literally saying, "Yeah, this is it. This is what we want."
Yeah, but the world has changed since then, and I'm not in any way a warmonger. I'm a pacifist, but the world has changed since then. Even before we even talk about justifying an EU army, you've got to look at the world stage in terms of the threats to the EU. You have to look at how meddling in elections has evolved over the decades, and the growth of new superpowers as well. So it's not beyond the realm of a reasonable discussion for the EU to be asking this question. And certainly the way the US administration is waving their lollipop around, giving out about Europe, it does kind of highlight where allies are and aren't. What that EU army could or should look like is a different story. Does the idea of anyone being drafted into an EU army sound appealing to anyone? Definitely not.
Okay, but you do accept you've no problem with the concept of an EU army as such. I mean, are we going to take part?
I accept the principle of it. No, I accept the principle of it, and if there's aliens going to invade, I'm all for that. You know, no, well, but I accept the principle of it. But what it looks like, how it.
Oh.
Can I butt in here? Do you know part of the Brexit deal that Theresa May has put to the Westminster and her cabinet, right, is about they're taking back fisheries as well as like their common agriculture. Can you imagine, just even say in the Irish Sea there, English fishermen facing off with the Paddies and the Spanish, and the Spanish and the French will be coming up to defend our lads. And like, you have to remember, like, the British Navy have tried missiles on their boats.
Well,
there has to be some measure of how serious this actually is.
Well, I mean, we'll see. I mean, it could turn out pretty impressive. We may be looking for an exit on the back of this in 5-10 years or so. I mean, yeah,
just the people who had that Irish conference in Dublin earlier on this year wouldn't exactly appeal to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's in Galway next. I'd say an invitation.
Our exit's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. I'd sooner be singing ABBA songs with Vanessa than an our exit happening.
Okay.
Fernando.
Well, what saddens me and what came out of the meeting last week, because we had, you can say they're only independents. People like to smear them. Mick Wallace, Claire Daly. That, they're talking I think I asked the question about principles or what, and they're more or less saying if we get jobs from people, if the economy, we're looking at Ireland now. We don't have the mass emigration that we had in the 50s or the 80s or whatever. And hopefully we'll never go back to that. So, principle, Mick Wallace actually made me laugh because he said, the way Trump said about the journalist that was murdered in the consulate in Istanbul. Well, we don't want to make too much about that because we have 110 or 130 billion in arms trade with Saudi Arabia, who are bombing the smithereens out of Yemen at the moment. So he's more or less saying, look, at money and business is more important than children's lives. You know what I mean? And do we have that on a smaller scale in Ireland? We do already with Shannon. We do. We don't. So just extend what's going on in Shannon. Okay, are we joining an EU army? Fine, lads. Just don't even bother talking about it. Let's just sign up.
Kieran, I just want to change the subject completely.
Yeah, sure.
For a second, because while Vanessa is there, I just want to ask her about.
Johnny sorry, John, I don't mean to interrupt, but Johnny was trying to get a discussion here with us on PESCO for quite some time. So I just want to know what he thought, if that's all right.
Johnny, your chance. Can we talk about PESCO in a second? Would you mind?
Well, I was up in Dáil Éireann when it was put through, and I took a few pictures. John Lennon gave Peace a chance, and I sent it in to Broadsheet. It wasn't that worthy of a news story to be put up at the time. So I'm really interested. I was actually going to go to that meeting that Kieran was on about. But Galway is the far side of the country from me, and I don't have any money. But I'm delighted that it's up online, so I will check.
Yeah, Johnny, you can watch the whole 2 hours on YouTube. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really serious situation for me anyway, because that's the reason why I voted against Lisbon. Because, I even had the foresight to know that a EU army was coming. So I take that kind of thing very seriously. And our sovereignty and neutrality is something that I take very seriously. And the idea of us being part of a EU army It's not going to bother me, but my nieces and nephews will definitely be drafted. I've no doubt about that, because that's the way the world is going. And Ireland still has that credibility on the world stage where we can be those peacekeepers. But because we're so Americanized now, we don't know our arse from our elbow, and we don't know what it's like to be an oppressed people. But it stems on with the refugee crisis, and everything revolves around war and money. So the PESCO is probably the most important thing when you talk about EU. And I can understand why the mainstream don't want to touch it. But
yeah, that's what struck Johnny. That's what struck me last Thursday night. Okay, there is this tendency to say, I know you want to move on, John, but that these people, Claire Daly, Mick Wallace, Ming, that they're they're independents, they're marginalised, and let's just ignore them. But we've had so much talk about Brexit for 2.5 years, and I've heard so little about PESCO. And okay, PESCO sounds boring, but the idea that the children or grandchildren of the current generation could be recruited into European army, or even that there will be a European army, is quite frightening, and we should all be talking about demilitarizing the whole bloody planet, not starting another superpower.
Completely. I just want to say, Johnny, that I don't want to. I'm not. This sounds defensive, but we have really kind of covered PESCO a lot on the site. I mean, as Kieran says, it's kind of a dry subject, but the EU army thing that. In fact, I think we've had a column already this week on it.
Well, you might have covered it on the site, John, but you definitely didn't cover it on the telly here. See, on the site, with an awful lot of the issues they get trolled upon. So here, I think maybe with Kieran's knowledge, and he's been to Shannon as well, I definitely think it should be an exclusive program.
Oh yeah.
Well, we're doing that right now. But I mean, say the likes of Ming, who sits in the European Parliament and has sifted through and read an awful lot more than me. There's an academic, Karen Devine, in DCU, he's worked a lot with her. They know a lot more about me, But we should be listening to these people. And Ming has this feeling that the mainstream just want to ridicule him and ignore him. Now, he has a big social media following, but he almost gives up on getting stuff into the mainstream media. So he's out in Europe, and the Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil guys are going, that's okay, move it on. Yeah, let it go to the Dáil. Let's not even talk about it. Yeah. So then the whole country seems to buy in about it. So, I find it kind of mad that, why are we not talking about this European army? I mean, I'm kind of up to my neck in Brexit, even though we all are. But even though, of course, we see it as very important for our island. It's hugely important. But so is this European army. So is the way Europe is going. Totally. Even more so if Britain is not in Europe and we are,
Yeah,
we're so small and irrelevant compared without the British with us.
I have to say, I completely agree with you, Kieran, non-surprisingly. But what I found is that when you mention PESCO or EU army and stuff like that, it really is, as you say, it's not a conversation anybody really wants to have, or certainly not in the mainstream anyway.
Yeah, and exactly. I mean, okay, Ming and them were talking about, when they focus on the health budget and say, do you want 6 times as money spent in the military as we have right now, which is going to be such a huge percentage of what we spend on our appalling health service? Well, if you put that across to people, how we spend our money, and Ming is concentrating on the farmers. He's saying, well, are you going to be okay with us taking money away from your sector to put it into an EU army? Yeah. That's what appeals to people, rather than just saying, oh, an EU army, it's a big abstract thing. It has no direct impact on my life,
And meanwhile, we ratchet up the anti-Russian rhetoric to the point where that's why we have to have an EU army, I guess,
Yeah.
To the point where they become such a threat in our heads that we urge a EU army. Do you know what I mean?
And I mean, going back to what Vanessa said, of course, there has been so much good from Europe in terms of legislation, in terms of how much Ireland has changed. And going back to the foundation of the European, or EEC as it was, of course, it was only ever supposed to be an economic kind of union. But it was a great thing because, you'd had so much turmoil in the first half of the 20th century.
Yeah, I know.
But the idea now that Germany and France together would have this gigantic army, they don't need little Ireland anyway. But if we're steamrolled into it, we haven't exactly had a great history of standing up to the Europeans if we're not happy with something.
Yeah, well, in relation to the conversation, you can rest assured, Kieran and lads, that there's loads of Mings around Europe, And once they go back to their own country and they give their information in relation to the billions, Ireland's going to go up to 3 billion to this EU army over a 5-year period. And it's a good analogy there, Kieran. This is coming out of our health system. So do you want health, or do you want to give money for people to be killed? It is a very black and white issue. And once people know that I don't know if you're shaking your head there, Vanessa, you disagree. Well,
it's not coming out of the health budget, because the health budget has been...
The health is going to suffer, so it kind of indirectly is. But the bottom line is that once the mainstream, and we see this, I'm sorry to be jumping when you're probably going to talk about Sergeant McCabe, but Mick Wallace and Claire Daly exposed all that, but John McGuinness is the guy that walks away with all the adulation. So it's no surprising that whatever Mick Daly and Claire Wallace say, they're completely being ostracised and loony lefties again, you see. But people are getting more informed.
No, but Johnny, I really believe people listen to everything Mick Wallace and Claire Daly say.
Well,
because I'm not interested in RT. I really do believe people on the street, the everyday person, are a lot more clued in. There's more people in Cork and Kerry and Limerick can point out Mick Wallace, and Claire Daly to you, than they could pick out Giuseppe Madigan, say.
Yeah, but
do you know what I mean? People are listening to what they absolutely are listening to what they say.
Vanessa, I think you're missing the point that Johnny's making. They are being marginalised, and Ming is really marginalised as you know, sometimes we're the only people who publish anything from his press releases or any quotes from his press releases.
Yes, but the people, the voter, is listening to him, Johnny and John.
Yeah, okay. Well,
I believe that.
Vanessa, you're missing the point.
Away from what we're trying to do here, discuss that Mick Wallace and Claire Daly, for example, went down to Shannon, and they actually were in court in Ennis for wanting to check rendition flights. Now, I'm not going to stick on this, John, because I know you want to move on. But
no, I don't, Johnny.
Okay, right. But it's kind of really important that we're looking at at where Irish politics is now and how the information is getting through. Now, it's literally not getting through. We know exactly what Broadsheet did in relation to the Disclosures Tribunal, but you'd be excused for thinking it was RT that were on top of all that, and that programme with Sergeant McCabe the other night was an example in relation to, oh my God, we didn't know anything. This has been all last summer, and now people all of a sudden know that the Sergeant McCabe. They only found out this week, John.
I know, Johnny. It's like when
it's bizarre.
Johnny, we're definitely going to talk about it, but I was hoping when Olga arrived back from her shift in town.
No, but just the point
I know.
That it never underestimate how docile and empathetic the majority of Irish people are.
I don't believe that, Johnny. I really don't.
Can I just make my point here to prove actually what I just said? That most of the people did not know what was going on last summer with the Disclosures Tribunal. They did, though, for Monday and Tuesday, that Garda McCabe.
Yeah.
If you read the online view,
that's so true. I saw people shocked at the documentary, the things that we knew from a year ago.
Exactly.
You know, the meetings in car parks, the rumours that went around. Oh my God, I didn't know this before. It's like me. I mean, I'm a journalist. I consider myself well educated. I learned so much about the EU Army because I went to the trouble, which most people wouldn't, of going to a 3-hour meeting about it in a university lecture hall on a Thursday night in November in Galway. Do you know what I mean? And now I do know a lot about PESCO, and I might have followed it from a distance, but it was rushed so quickly through the Dáil last December. Most Irish people aren't aware of it. And I think Johnny, I mean, agreeing with Johnny on this one.
Don't forget.
Why are they being ignored?
Johnny.
Sorry.
I have to say, I agree with you. So I want to interrupt, and I'll let Vanessa speak because I think you want to get something. You were trying to say something there, Vanessa, were you?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I just believe people are a lot more savvy and a lot more clued in than. I don't think people are waiting to see it on RT anymore.
Well, I must say,
I think people are. I think people are checking out, say, Mick Wallace's Facebook page, or maybe with the Maurice McCabe story, they weren't as detailed in as say we were here thanks to John and Olga on Broadsheet, because they just fucking switched off. We did here as well, you know. But I honestly believe the everyday citizen is a lot more savvy and a lot more clued in than people are giving them credit for. I really do.
Well, I think RTE kind of do a number on them. I mean,
they do. They treat them like. But you look who's on the late again tomorrow night. You know, and they're just selling them crap. They're force feeding them nonsense.
Okay,
and that's why people are switching off.
Yeah, I know.
That's it. They're not switched off. That's the thing. It's been proven with the documentary that the online hysteria that this could happen. It has been happening for the last 2 years. John, the first show that we did was talking about how corrupt the Gardaí economy was. That was February 2017. So we've been talking about. Olga has tweeted about it for the whole summer, and the majority of Irish people are now. My God, this has happened. So that's down to them just getting their information from RT. I just proved the point on what I said. So Vanessa, what you said, it doesn't make sense to what I said. Sorry.
Johnny, hang on. Johnny, it's a bit like, you know, you're into a band and then they go mainstream. And
Yeah. I like the early stuff.
Yeah, well, it is a bit like this because, it's really, Morris really went mainstream in a sense that a lot of people really didn't know his story. Funnily enough, a lot of people, I realized that we were in a bubble. I thought we were always looking at this sort of Dublin bubble and thinking, oh, that's the bubble. But we're actually in a bubble ourselves in terms of information. The people are just too busy.
Yeah. Like I would have followed on your site, John, the stuff coming out with the Disclosures Tribunal. I found it amazing, you know. Or when the report comes out, I mean, that's the journalist's job. Pick out the important parts. I wrote a couple of articles for an Irish American website, and they were kind of shocked. They were going, "This is like the Irish Serpico, you know, the famous film of the cop fighting corruption in America. Oh my God, you got an Irish Serpico." But yeah, I think that's what kind of surprised me about the two. I think you want to talk about them later, but the two films, the documentary, that people were surprised about things that people who were familiar with your site would have known all along. You know?
Yeah, it's a bit unsettling because you realize then, oh my God, you know, that the mainstream is a different world, isn't it? That sort of that mass audience, that 500,000 that watched the documentary, you know. I mean, it's done a fantastic service for the whistleblowing, for whistleblowing generally. I think.
Yeah, and I'm agreeing with Johnny here again, but that's what I blogged about today because I finally had a couple hours to just sit down and write a piece about last Thursday. I offered reports to 3 news editors, and none of them wanted anything to do. They just didn't reply. So I was like, going, well, you know. Is this because there's nothing newsworthy in it? I thought, well, he's got 4 TDs, 2 MEPs, an academic, and or 2 academics, all talking about an EU army. I thought, geez, it might be worth some coverage, you know. And there was zero interest, and I think that's why maybe Ming decided to get 3 or 4 people to film the whole thing, because then at least he can put it up on his own social media, you know.
Yeah.
And because of that, sorry to cut across you, John, Kieran. It's like. The people now have to understand that RTE is the propaganda tool of the state, and so there's a vested interest in them not reporting on Ming's meeting in Galway University.
But they always were, Johnny. They always were. I
know that, Vanessa, but at least now we can say that there is so much media out there that shows like this. You see other people just setting up their own people to hang out.
You can contradict it, absolutely.
Yeah, but not even contradicted. But people, for years, I've been hearing people tell me the news back that they'd have on 6-1. Even Joe Duffy was news. So now it's kind of at the stage where you really can't accept what RTE say because they have an agenda. And what's really frightening about that is that we're asked to pay for that lies and deception. It's complete gobble. And BBC are the same. They're establishment broadcasters. The whole aspect of it is that what should come out of it now, like Mary McCallaghan tweeted a powerful documentary by RTE, and I then the comment says, well, if you had started this a few years ago, it mightn't have come to this. Words to that effect. You know, so the hypocrisy is rank with this media, and they've all been exposed in this tribunal as well. I wonder, will RT have their program on that one?
Johnny, we wanted to talk about this when Olga arrived, but maybe, but we're in the heat of it. That's fine. Let's. That's
Olga's thing.
No, but let's get stuck in because you know, Olga. Olga thought it was good. It was a good documentary, but she you have to say, John. I think you have to say, Katie Hannon made a wonderful documentary.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
And
those of us who have followed it, I was never going to dare to ring up Maurice McCabe and say, "Can I quote you for an Irish American website?" I don't think that would be appropriate or whatever.
I'm expecting him to come on the show.
This show, yeah. So I thought it was fantastic to actually hear him and his wife tell their story in their own words, that they did it over to. You're right. I mean, I saw people tweeting saying, why wasn't Claire Daly mentioned? Because what about the night that she was pulled over for drink driving in Dublin when she wasn't drink driving? Or she's the first person that, you know, brought up this, or that again, it goes back to Claire Daly and Mick Wallace started raising concerns, and then they go, you can dismiss those, you know, like no more. It didn't get into mainstream politics, no more than the mainstream media, but on its own terms, it was a fantastic documentary, I thought, because we needed to hear his story. And even it's great that people have finally found out how rotten the smearing of Maurice McCabe was, if they weren't paying attention before now. You know.
You see, Johnny, particularly, because you see, Johnny, you this is very close to the surface for you, and I think you know, maybe the McCabe family took comfort in everyone now knowing officially that they were vindicated. Them coming on a show like ours might just be a bit too, you know, Claire Daly, Mick Wallace. I mean, now they know they have been vindicated now officially on RTE, and that's a huge. That's like, John, you're shaking your head, and I know why. Okay,
I am. I found it difficult. In fact, I didn't watch the documentary. I must say.
Well, I understand.
But I found it difficult on this basis.
It's important for the McCabe family.
Vanessa, I appreciate what Maurice can do what the hell he damn well likes. I don't, you know, he deserves whatever he wants, and he can get whatever he wants, and that's great. All I would say is that RTE were complicit, in my honestly held opinion, in the smears against Maurice and the characterization of Maurice as a crank and a liar. And I think I would have thought that Maurice would have gone, maybe, I don't know, Virgin Media or something less state broadcaster, but he went, and I'm not. It's no reflection on Katie Hannon at all, but people were marginalised from Maurice's story, and they were pivotal, and I include in that Mick and Claire and obviously Gemma O'Doherty. But you know, it was only a 2-part documentary. I mean,
there by RT, John, to exclude them from the narrative, because they were very much a part of it. Now, that's nothing to do with Maurice, nor has anything to do with Katie Hannon. It's the executives, it's the top brass in RT, once again, the establishment, who said, keep these lefties away, lads. Keep the lefties away. Make if we want to make someone look good, John McGuinness is our man. John McGuinness, did he do that much, in fairness? I would look at the documentary, you'd think he did. He saved the day.
Well, I have to be. I mean, to his credit, and also even Leo Varadkar's credit for calling McCabe Maurice distinguished at that time. You know, there were key moments where the story needed, you know, like needed help. Maurice needed help, and he got it in a key moment from.
Well, lads, and I also don't blame Maurice at all for trying to reach the maximum possible audience at this.
That's what I think
at this particular stage, because when he's doing the school run with his kids, and 5 of the neighbours have seen him and say, "Oh, we saw the documentary. Wow, you're amazing." You know, rather than being on obscure places or whatever, to reach the maximum possible audience, like he deserved that from RT after what he's been through.
It was important for them.
It does. We're actually joined in Galway, near you, Kieran. You should be at this meeting, in fact.
You're telling me where I should be.
John.
Hello, Gemma O'Doherty.
Sorry to interrupt your conversation. We're not going to stay long with you, but we've had a very successful anti-corruption meeting in Galway this evening, and I'm here with Seamus May, who's just going to have a quick word with you, and also Julie Grace. Seamus has been doing a lot of work exposing corruption within the whole cartel business and banking, etc. He's got some really good ideas for the country. So if you want to have a quick word with Seamus.
Hello, Seamus.
John, how are you?
I'm very well. How was the meeting this evening? It sounded it was well attended.
We had an excellent meeting this evening. A very good crowd, and we covered a lot of issues, all basically to do with corruption in one form or another in this country.
Seamus, you've been on this Changemakers for a few weeks now, or for the past number of months, isn't that right?
That's right. Yeah, we've done a number of locations. Yeah.
What is your address like in brief? What do you say to the audience?
Well, basically, I highlight the type of corruption that I've encountered, which is mostly white-collar crime, sort of stuff like criminal price-fixing cartels, the criminality that has gone on in the banking system, the huge level of overcharges that our mortgage holders and anyone that has a loan in Ireland has been charged by the pillar banks. Why the government refuses point blank to bring in public and community banking, why the government is destroying the post office network when it should be turning it into a model like in New Zealand, the Kiwi Bank. There's so much we can do, but because our government is in the hands of global corporations and the likes of Bilderberg and Davos and this, we cannot, simply the public interest doesn't count anymore in this country and unfortunately in other countries. It's the corporate interest over the public interest, and that's basically the message that I send out in my Changemaker talks and other talks that I do around the country.
And how did the audience react to this? I mean, is it a lot of empathy with that?
I think they're quite amazed at the extent of the what I describe. I mean, I get an incredible reaction every time I speak about it. So it really needs a platform. And RTE, of course, I because I'm in the courts myself and have been for the last 22 years, well, more really, I've seen how the media work. And the issues, the real key issues are not getting out in either the print media or on RTE. I have files with RTE, I have files with Director General of RTE complaining about what's going on and how white-collar crime has been covered up all the time.
And nothing, and you're not getting much, getting much response from them. No, not much traction from them.
No, zero. I mean, this club that is running Ireland has to be broken up. The media is a huge part of it. The whip in the party politics is a huge part of it. I mean, unfortunately, our society and our political system has become so corrupt. It's very hard to know how we're going to change it. But listen, there's a growing movement throughout the country. I see it across several different movements, several different sectors. Even the farmers' meeting was at yesterday, and we can only hope that we keep the pressure up. We keep improving the movement, and hopefully we make the breakthrough and take the power back to the people where it's supposed to belong.
And Seamus, would you stand next May among changemakers, among corruption candidates? I gather there might be a number of candidates running.
Yeah, well, from a number of different movements that I'm involved in, everyone is trying to, get candidates to come forward and go forward. It's not everybody that wants to go into politics, there's room for everybody. But yes, we've got to stand as many independents as we can. And I have to say that I'm very encouraged by today's development, whereby Padar Tobin has decided to resign from Sinn Féin and hopefully form his own movement. It may be a movement, not a party, but I can see it coming together, a gradual coming together.
Okay, and sorry, did you want to get in there? Sorry. Oh no, sorry, no, there was just a voice in the background there. And Seamus, the meeting this evening, can you tell me what the response was like in Galway?
Well, I think the response was everybody was together. Everybody was really taken aback by what they heard. I think that secretly or deep down they all know what has been going on. But
and do they have their own? Do they come with their own stories of?
Yes, yeah. Normally, you get a large percentage of people with their own stories, and it's just very difficult for people like me or like Gemma or anybody else to take up. You can only deal with so much. So, in fairness to Gemma, she tells people they have to go out themselves. They have to get on social media. they have to stand for election, or to get their buddies or their friends to stand for election. So, you know, we can't do it all. All we can do is provide some leadership.
And Seamus, how can people contact you then? I know you're on Twitter, and you're the International Small Business Alliance, is that?
Yeah, we're on Twitter, and I'm on Facebook. It's easy to get me on Facebook. It's just Seamus May, M-A-Y-E.
Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn as well as Seamus May, and I'm on Twitter as ISBA.
Brilliant. Hopefully we'll maybe have you on our show properly, and we can from the start in a few weeks' time, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're just finishing up here and talking to people, so maybe not the best time to have a chat, but I'm more than happy to talk at length about these things with you at any stage in the future.
Great, and lovely to talk to you, Seamus. Could I?
Hello, Seamus.
Yes,
Thank you, John.
Seamus is just doing phenomenal work, but I'm also joined here by Julie Grace,
Hello.
who was an employee, John, in Galway City Council, and she left as a result of standing up against wrongdoing within the City Council. So she's going to just briefly tell you her story, Julie.
Hello,
Hi.
Julie.
How are you doing? I'm Julie Grace, obviously. Yeah, I was.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay. I'm a former tenant liaison officer at Galway City Council, and when I refused to act corruptly to the point that it was an act of criminality, I was got rid of through an interview process. I was asked to misappropriate a document for a court, to mislead the judge, which ultimately led in the eviction of a woman whose only option, sadly, was to commit suicide in 2004. As well as that, I raised other issues of misappropriation of council housing, misappropriation of legal services, and it cost me my career. I watched Maurice McCabe's documentary for the past 2 nights, and I can see so many similarities in the way he was treated, and that my good name was taken from me in the council chamber. I had no choice but to go to the High Court and my good name affirmed, which I had done by Justice Dunn. However, it cost me a lot. It cost me a career. It almost cost me my health. But fortunately, I'm at the stage of life where my family are reared, and I had no choice but to do it anyway. I would say for whistleblowers in this country, I was probably the first whistleblower in the local authorities. I've been totally unsupported in my High Court case. It was discovered there's an absence of legislation in relation to recruitment in local authorities, i.e. they can select whichever candidates they want. They are not accountable. They apply to the Department for funding in the first instance, but they need not stay with the criteria. I've raised that with numerous ministers, including Brendan Howell, who told me to take the matter to Europe. He refused as a minister for reform to deal with the matter. Indy Kenny is aware of it. I've had nothing but grief right through since I raised that issue. I refused to be corrupt.
Yeah.
The council went into the High Court with and the taxpayers' open purse and
To fight you.
to fight me. But in fact, after 5 days, they didn't actually continue with it. An agreement was reached in the sense that my good name was restored to me. They could stay in court for the rest of the year if they wanted to, and I gathered they were their instructions. They apologised, and the judge found that all of my evidence was taken at its highest point, which was good enough for me, and that was Justice Dunn. It was a serious, she's in a higher role now from the High Court. I was telling the truth. I always told the truth. But, you know, the perpetrators of the injustices to the vulnerable tenant who actually was sexually abused in the environs of her own apartment, which ironically not one female in this national politician raised at any time. And it was a sad reflection on society. It's still a sad reflection on our elected representatives that not one woman, and I raised with several of them, took issue with that particular point, as well as everything else. I have published my account of my own challenges right through the council, and my book is called Abuse of Power, because councils can, and I believe that council executives have far too much power. I believe they're unsanctioned, they're unsanctionable, and they're basically ran like fiefdoms. I do believe that there is no political will to change, because the absence of legislation that I raised 10 years ago has still not been raised at cabinet level. They're well aware of it. Indy Kenny, I met him on numerous occasions, and he was going to address it. He didn't do it. At the moment, the only person who I believe is interested in my situation is John McGuinness, who has actually raised it in the under the Dáil a few times. Now, McCabe, in fairness, the local politician here, has also raised it laterally.
Julie, sorry, can you tell me exactly what to raise what exactly?
Sorry?
To raise what exactly, Julie? I mean, what is it you want?
Because I have actually applied. Sorry, I have applied under the 2014 legislation for the 5 years compensation, which I'm entitled to under the Protected Disclosures Act. Now, I put in an application in 2016, 2 years after the enactment of the legislation. They had no machinery to deal with it. This is hard to believe, but the people whom I complained about in my application, they actually sent it down to them for a judgment. And there were 2 people I named. One was a council employee who was corrupt, and the other was the legal firm who I believe were actually giving their services to the public, funded by the council, with the sole purpose of getting an injunction against a vulnerable woman, which I would not accommodate, and which it's all in my book. Surrounding issues there, but I don't know how strong this legislation is. It's as good as it is in its application, but I am being faffed about with, and this is what they do. This is what the establishment does. They do everything to beat you, but they tried everything, but they haven't succeeded yet, and I can guarantee you that they won't.
And Julie, may I ask, would you do this all over again? I mean, would you whistleblow if you knew what?
Yeah, I can say I would not ever sign a document that's false and there was an act of criminality and that would lead to a person's death. So yes, I would do the same all over again.
Well, Julie, I'd love to. Hopefully, we can speak to you like Seamus on the show in the next few weeks properly. And thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. And thanks very much to Gemma and to Seamus.
Thanks, Gemma.
Julie is a great person. Just because she stood up for a vulnerable citizen, she really was put in a dreadful position. John, if you have time, I'm delighted to be joined by Tom O'Callaghan, who's the chairman of the Independent Postmaster Group. Tom, you're a lot taller than me. So
hello.
But Tom has been doing great work against the decimation of our rural post office network. So he's going to explain a little bit about the work he's been doing.
Hello, Tom. And hello from Vanessa, Neil, Johnny, Kieran, and myself, and everybody at Broadsheet.
Very good. How are you doing?
You had a good meeting tonight.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was very informative, and I suppose in one sense it's difficult to hear because it's kind of reiterating what's happening in all factors of society. And one area that I'm very strong about is our own post office network, which is actually owned by the people, and it is being decimated. And it affects everybody. It affects the young, the old, and people will turn around and say, in the modern world, sure, you're outdated. Well, the reality is we have the technology, we're interlinked, but we're not being given the tools, we're not being made relevant to what the public wants.
And this is deliberate, Tom, is it? Is this?
There's absolutely no question on it. I mean, I personally lobbied all 158 TDs, all senators, and wrote to 900 councillors. This is in 2016. I was successful in getting a private member's motion brought in front of Dáil, which is backed by the Rural Independent Group. And on that, we got 158 votes, unanimously passed, and it has been totally ignored. And currently, you have now 159 community post offices have been shut down, with 80 to go in January. There is something seriously very wrong here.
It feels like the trains, the railway network that they just ripped apart, and it was only 20 years later that they started regretting it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at now in New Zealand, for example, population very similar to Ireland. They have about 5.2 million. We're 5.2 million, about 4.9, quite similar. Their post office network, at the time, the political parties were under pressure, but the people took action, and they said that they wanted their network to survive. What they did was to create their own community bank. But the difference here, we need to understand is the profit from that bank goes back to the communities. And this is something we need to understand. Their network, with the same amount of post offices, last year turned over a net profit of 126 million euro. But the significant difference is that profit does not go back to the shareholders, it goes back to the community. It goes back to the village and towns where they can allocate the money to their costs, which could be your daycare centre to build a playground, your local GA grounds, or basically just to try and enhance the community. So the reason I believe that this has been stopped is quite simple. We're a genuine threat to the profitability of the pillar banks. So the end result of this is the villages have been shut down, but it's hitting the normal people, which I call is really treason, you could call it, if you want to go that strong, in not allowing this to happen. And that's quite sad.
Thank you, Tom. It's very sobering.
Okay.
It's extremely sobering, Tom.
Oh, sorry there, John, my apologies.
No, not at all. Thank you very much. I just want to say that was extremely sobering.
Okay, thank you, John.
He's excellent, and so we're here in the heart of rural Ireland, and my goodness, the corruption stories we've heard tonight, John. It's just one after the other in every town that we go to. It's relentless. Citizens on their knees, being put through the most appalling crimes by our Gardaí. It's agonizing to listen to, but there is an awful lot of hope there as well, that people want change. They realise the media are keeping them in the dark. They realise Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have duped them time after time. They realise the parties of the left do not offer solutions either, and they're seeing that the key pillars of the next mass movement need to be anti-corruption, protection of taxes, accountability and transparency.
Gemma, just before you go, I wanted to mention, I don't want to go into any details, but I wanted to mention the charges brought against John McLean, the former Terranure rugby coach. I just want to say that that you've spoken to, that your work with Mr. McLean's alleged victims prompted the charges being brought. I just wanted to state that and just say congratulations on that. I mean, in terms of the work on that story.
Well, thank you, and it's been an honour to work with. On this story, because I didn't, and I'm not talking about John McLean now, but I grew up down the road from Terranure College, and I had no idea what was going on in that school because I was very lucky to have a good education down the road, and John McLean is still an innocent man in the eyes of the court. His alleged victims, some of them, have been waiting a long time for him to face justice, and I know, having spoken to some of them yesterday, some of his alleged victims yesterday, that they had a great sense of relief that at last he will face justice in the coming months. So we shall wait and see, and we will respect the courts to do their job now.
Okay. Well, Gemma, I won't keep you, and thank you so much for joining us from Galway, from the Changemakers. When is the next Changemakers meeting?
Well, we're going to be in Wexford in the next fortnight, and then we're hitting the big smoke, Dublin.
Oh, Dublin.
Because
Okay.
there's a lot of demand for Dublin, and Dublin, it's so important really, because so many people in Dublin are just sort of going with the flow, and I think it's been different in rural Ireland. They're feeling the corruption more maybe. In Dublin, people are so busy with their lives and stuck in gridlock and all, it's a different sort of thing. So we really have a lot of wakening up to do in Dublin. But
any idea on the venue yet?
Well, we're going to go to different venues. We're going to target it according to the 4 county councils. So we're going to target Fingal, South County, Dublin, Tala, Dunleary, Rathdown, and then obviously the City Council. So we have a big, that appalling term, job of work to do as far as Dublin is concerned. Because if we can waken up the people of Dublin, well, that's a third of the battle. But there's this movement is growing, and I'm really, really delighted to hear that Peadar Tobin has left Sinn Féin. Peadar is a man of conscience. This is a rare trait in Irish politics today. Peadar stood with his conscience. He did not go with the baying mob. He stood over what he believed in, and he's a man of integrity, and I would like to see him lead an anti-corruption movement, and I'm calling out to him I know Pather, and I'm calling out to him to start this now, to get behind this, because he's a leader. He stood up against those people in Sinn Féin who denied him his right of free thought.
Yeah, I have to
This
say,
is part of the problem in Ireland now, that people are not allowed to have free thought on matters of conscience. And Sinn Féin have disgraced themselves yet again.
I have to say, yeah, it did seem like that. I mean,
That's not true.
okay.
That's not. Padder was allowed to defend the pro-life side during.
I'm actually going to leave because there's a lot of people here, but you can continue to debate that.
Okay.
But John, thank you very much, and sorry for the interruption.
Not at all. Thank you very much for joining us, and thanks.
For waiting to talk to us.
Okay, and thanks to Seamus and Julie, Seamus May and Julie Grace. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Gemma.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Sorry, Vanessa.
Yeah, but sorry, Sinn Féin gave Pather Tobin full license to represent his views for the pro-life side, and he went on he was the pro-life in the debate, the representative in the debate. So to say he was stopped from giving his views is not necessarily true.
He said today that they didn't write back to him. He's written to them recently, and he didn't even get a response from anybody like the leadership, presumably Mary Lou and Michelle.
On what?
Well, on this matter, I mean, it sounds like they.
Sorry, he did speak for the pro-life side in the debates.
No, I know, but
he did represent them.
He says that as a result of that, he's been marginalised within the party.
He was suspended for 6 months.
Yeah, but more than that, that he's not. That he had sat down with them and they'd agreed. Okay, that's, you know, we're over that now. But he says that the hostility has continued.
Well, I mean, I can't speak to what his day-to-day life is like in Leinster House or with his party colleagues, but I really think it's to say that he was shut down and denied that. I mean, the man was given freedom to speak as he saw it, and so I don't know where that notion comes from. He was on RT giving a debate, presenting the side several times. So I don't know. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe
No, he's saying that
maybe they've taken over.
He's saying that since then.
Maybe it's the vaccinations I've had, the flu.
Can I say something? It reminds me
that at all, but I think what he was saying that is that he was ostracized a bit, marginalized, and made to feel like a pariah. From that, I mean, if you read his,
well, we all know what it's like to be treated like a pariah. So I mean, that's his business. You know, I mean, I just don't think it was right to say something like that when he was front and center as part of the pro-life campaign, and nobody made a big deal out of it.
Would Carol Nolan be in that same?
Yeah, that's the problem. It's politics actually. Johnny's hit it on the head as to why he's left Sinn Féin.
Yeah, but it was over an issue, though, wasn't it?
I think it was probably brewing, and I think it's sad in a way because he's probably one of the smartest men in Sinn Féin. Is Pather Tobin? He's an incredibly smart man. He can
probably be smarter outside of the political party now because there's no remit on him. So you know.
Well, he's ministerial quality. He's ministerial standard. There's no doubt about that.
But isn't it looking very like that? What you're seeing now and the power of independence, and Kieran mentioned Catherine Connolly, a fantastic independent TD from Galway, and like these independents that are outside the hang up of the establishment parties now is the new face of Irish politics. And I think that's very good because they're independently minded. There's no party whip, and the more people that are independent. Should be really recognised now in the forthcoming local elections, because I think there's a big movement on here, and as I say, I was lucky to be part of that Changemakers, the first show in Kilkenny, remember last September or August, and I seen the momentum that it has, and it's good to see that more people. And Gemma's show as well. I wanted to ask her about the feedback in relation to the Fáilte Marais program she had there last week, which was very interesting, worth checking out there. Sorry, John, I'm not giving a plug for anything else there. Well, you know, what Jim is doing is an independent voice as well, same as what
exactly.
And it has to be looked at in relation to that. And she has very good, interesting guests. And it is about moving the conversation forward. And it's no coincidence that when Seamus May started talking about him going up against the national broadcaster and Jim being blacklisted by the national broadcaster. So it's not just a tinfoil hat here from the broadsheet dungeon. Everyone is kind of woken up. The coffee is very much being smelt. And this is it. This is it, because people are now informed and they have the information, and there is no excuse for ignorance.
But we don't. But what we don't have, we're not informed yet of the 3 movies for the weekend, Neil. Because around about now, you like to give us the movies to watch at the weekend.
I mean, it's going to be hard to top all of the excitement tonight of Brexit and all that jazz. I can't think of a segue, John, to be fair.
Okay.
Well, I'll give you one. You never told us Crazy Rich Asians was so good.
Well, I didn't need to. I mean, it spoke for itself, and I knew you'd love it. But I tell you, wait till you hear what we have this week. There's a lot going on in the movie world this week. So where's all the Harry Potter fans out there? Right, well, there's a Harry Potter. There's another fucking Fantastic Beasts movie out this week with Johnny Depp and Jude Law. And isn't Jude Law great in it? It's the sequel. It's Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. It's got lots of characters whose names I can't pronounce, and if you can't pronounce the names, you're obviously not a fan of the Potters, the Potter world. So if you like Harry Potter, go and see it. If you don't bother. Go see something else instead. And it just so happens there's other things you can go see. See, I'm not into all those films. And I know you're like, Neil, would you ever talk about them for a bit? But I just can't. I spent long enough watching them when I was a child, and I'm not going to torture myself now at this age. But I am going to talk to you about something that is of interest to me. And there's a film out, there's a horror film out this week called Suspiria. Is that anyone, that name ring a bell with anyone?
Yeah.
No. I thought you were going to talk about Stan Lee. Give us a...
Oh, well, it's getting to him. So Suspiria is actually, I guess, a remake, but the director of it doesn't like to call it a remake. The original film, also called Suspiria, was directed by Dario Argento, the Italian auteur, and it came out in 1977. And it was a real art house horror film. It had a lot of. It was set in a cultish ballet dancing thing, cult, witches, supernatural tones. Excellent film. Argento was heavily influenced by Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, believe it or not. And the film was shot in Technicolor. A lot of use of artistic styles you associate with art house films. Very, very good. And this lad came along, Luca Guadagnino. He sounds like someone from a Harry Potter film as well, but he's not. And his name may ring a bell because he has directed Call Me by Your Name, A Bigger Splash, and The Protagonists. So he's calls this film a homage to the original. Has the same plot. It's even set in the same year in 1977, but it's an hour longer than the original, which probably kind of skews the whole remake reboot thing. But Argento himself is one of the writers on the film. Unfortunately, it kind of misses the mark. It kind of misses out on what Argento did stylistically at the time. It's a solid film in its own right, but go with the original if you want to treat yourself to a bit of art house horror. It stars Dakota Johnson and Chloe Grace Moretz, who you could be forgiven for thinking they were the same person, and also Tilda Swinton. Tilda Swinton actually plays a male character, and the prosthetics and makeup that they have on her are fantastic. Really stand out. So you may not recognize her at first. So that's one to check out for the devilment. Just as a random fact about the original film, when Argento was writing it, he originally wrote the dance company to be all 12-year-old girls, and then it was either the producer or one of the other writers said, you can stuff that idea because that'll definitely get the film banned. So he rewrote the characters as 20-year-old girls, but didn't really change the dialogue. So a lot of the dialogue that they have in the original was written for kids, but it's played by young adults. So there's a useless bit of information. But there is one other film out this week, and that is Siberia, starring Keanu Reeves and directed by Matthew Ross. And basically, he's a diamond trader. His Russian missus goes missing, and he heads off to Siberia. Sorry, not his Russian missus. His Russian business partner goes missing, and he heads off to Siberia and falls in love and all that.
Is The Rock in that? No.
The Rock, unfortunately, is not in that. But Keanu Reeves now is, I mean, he looks like John Wick in all these films that he's doing lately.
Yeah.
And he's known as an actor with a heart as well, because a lot of good stories. He gets the subway to around New York and things like that. So he's supposed to be a nice guy. But it's not, the reviews, I haven't seen it yet, but the reviews on it aren't very hot at the moment. But Reeves he's an interesting guy, because he used to be a horrendously bad actor like The Plank. And then he kind of hit the Matrix, and it was kind of like the Terminator for Reeves. It kind of really fitted him.
Yeah, because
but then since then he's kind of started to flex his acting muscles a little bit more. Not saying this is the film that did it, but you know, he turned into a very credible action star with John Wick.
Very much so.
And of course, Bill and Ted is potentially getting a reboot.
Oh.
so the movies are, but there's a few movie tidbits to share, which obviously Vanessa let the cat out of the bag in case you hadn't heard. Stan Lee died at the age of 95, I think it was. Yeah. And he didn't escape the whole Me Too thing. There was some accusations made in the last year, but obviously he had a huge impact on the comic book world. I mean, if you were to look at all the films that had his name attached, he cameoed in all the Marvel movies that he had an affiliation with. So the guy was the Steve Jobs of the comic book world. And so he's passed away. Right. But I do have some other news now. I know you're all big Star Wars fans, and we've been talking in previous shows about how Disney have shelved all the spin-off movies because Solo performed very poorly in Disney figures at the box office, and the Boba Fett movie was canned, the Ben Kenobi movie was canned. But they have announced that they're going to make a live-action TV series based on one of your favorite characters. Anyone got any idea which character they're going to base this live TV series on? It's a Star Wars TV show. We wanted this live action, not a cartoon. And they're based on...
Jesus, shut up.
Chewbacca.
What character? Chewbacca? No, not Chewbacca. Anyone else?
The girl. What was the girl's name?
Princess Leia? No, not her.
Her. No.
One more guess.
Harrison Ford. Who was he in it?
Han Solo. No,
Solo.
Well, him. They're based on... It's... Sorry, say again, Johnny?
Obi McGoby, is it? Or
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Obi-Wan Kenobi Scobie. No, it wasn't him. They're based on the character of Cassian Andor.
Jesus. Who was that? Exactly. Neil, don't say it. John, who was that character?
I have no idea. What?
See, I don't feel so bad now.
Yeah, you don't need to feel bad, because Cassian Andor, he's a character in one of the modern films, but not even the mainstream films. He's in he's in Rogue One. He's a character in Rogue One. He's not the lead in Rogue One, and they're giving him a TV show as opposed to one of the characters the rest of us heard of. So I'm sure that's doomed to failure as well. One other bit of film news to share with you is my notes after freezing on me.
Well, can I talk about New Murphy Brown?
Oh, 1 second. No, because this is Neil's slots.
They're making another Leprechaun film, and that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about Pokemon. Do you remember Pokemon?
Yeah.
Well, they launched the trailer this week, and I have to tell you, it's worth checking it out. There's a Pokemon movie coming out called Detective Pikachu, and as you know, Pikachu was the lead Pokemon. You might be going, oh, not another fucking cartoon. What's Neil talking about this? It's actually a live action Pokemon movie, and as Vanessa said, Ryan Reynolds plays Pikachu, and this could be.
Ask me how I know that.
Okay.
How do you know that, Vanessa?
Because he used to tweet pictures from the makeup room to me.
Oh, there you go.
Right.
So, to be fair, the trailer looks like a big pile of shite, but it looks like a lot of fun. But we've seen a stream of these films.
Nothing to convince me that the Hollywood is not dead, Neil. To this week,
I tell you, there's no Brexit in Hollywood. That's for sure.
Boy. Well, that sounds.
He's not offering us a great alternative to Ryan Tuberty tomorrow night, is he?
Well, this is it.
Go get your hands on the original Suspiria, watch it, wonder what the fuck you'd watched, and then give out about it on the show next week. That's what I recommend you do.
Kira, Neil, thank you so much for that. That's
No Murphy Brown then.
Oh yeah, Murphy Brown. Go on, tell us about Murphy.
Murphy Brown is back, John. And did you see anyone see it? No, and no one's interested.
Oh, the Candice Bergen.
Yeah, she's back playing Murphy Brown.
Okay.
And Jim Dial has a cameo in it every so often, but pretty much all the same crew are back in. And sorry, nobody remembers Murphy Brown.
No. I vaguely do. Kieran doesn't.
I love it. I do remember. I loved it.
And he tried to avoid doing homework, and Murphy Brown was top of the list.
Well, she caused a big political scandal because George Bush had a go with her.
No, it was Dan Quayle. Do you remember they played her? She was pregnant in it.
Oh, it was Dan Quayle, yeah.
I think it was Dan Quayle had kicked off. But her son now is all grown up, and he's. Am I going to give away the story here? But you're not. It's only 20 minutes now.
But you're going to give away the story, and no one's interested. No, I'm joking. Come on, Vanessa.
That's all right. That's all right. No, it's fine.
I'm joking. No, come on. Just tell us the story. Go on. He's grown up.
He's grown up, but he's a reporter, news reporter now. But he's on what they're calling the Wolf Channel versus it's like to mirror the Fox Channel.
He's a right winger.
No, he's not. But he's sort of the pretty young guy to kind of tone it down. But his character is very good in it. He's really laid back, and she's brilliant again. She's exactly where she left off.
That's great. Yeah. Well,
but the only thing is, do you remember Miles, the TV exec, the kid in it? Does he remember?
Kind of.
Yeah. He's actually aged the worst of them all.
Okay.
Phil is dead. It's his sister now runs the bar.
Phil's dead. Who is? They killed Phil, did they?
Well, I don't know. Maybe he died himself. It was 30 years ago.
Rather kind of character, Vanessa, didn't they?
Yeah, Jim Dial. Yeah, he was the anchor.
And the sports guy.
Yeah, the investigative. He's same character again, and Corky is still there.
Okay.
They've all come back.
Well, who is she? Who is Murphy Brown? She's
Candice Bergen.
Yeah, she really good. She looks great for her. I know she's not that young, but.
And Avery, the son, is a great character. Oh, the painter and decorator. Do you remember him in the show? He's gone. He's not in it anymore either.
Oh, that's a pity. Neil.
John.
What? It is a pity. He's not in it. I mean, come on. What happened? I mean, maybe he's dead. Maybe he died.
Well, I'd reckon. Look, guys, if you weren't into Murphy Brown the first time, you won't get it this time. So, stay away from it.
On the news. The newsroom, there was actually a good thing that I just fell across. It was on after the Maurice McCabe documentary the other night. Press, I thought it was really good. But the English news paper world of one kind of a tabloid against one, I suppose, righteous paper. The Post against the Herald. So the Post being the tabloid one, but the stories are really interesting. So I don't know, is it an ongoing thing? But it's on Tuesday nights on RT. I thought that was good.
Kieran, as blogger of the year, you won blog of the year a couple of weeks ago. The journalism awards were on today. Were you keeping in touch with them?
No, I was out at a Palestinian meeting actually last night in Galway. That's why I wasn't at Gemmet. I saw one or two, but I haven't seen the whole list. So it was on tonight in Dublin, yeah.
Okay.
I know it can be very political, can't it? I think I read something in the Phoenix recently. If a certain newspaper doesn't get many awards, they kind of try to downgrade it and have a bit of a huff, and where people sit and who gets the most awards, a lot of attention is paid to it. But no, I haven't seen the full list yet, John, because I just came home.
Oh no! I was just wondering just whether you'd been keeping abreast on it. Did we congratulate you on your blog of the year, by the way?
You did last week. I showed off my phallic symbol
It was
award.
like a Mickey.
Exactly.
I'm going to bring down my awards. Do you know what? I'm going to go upstairs now and bring down my awards. I'm going to have them all there.
Okay. What shapes are they? What's that?
Philip Nolan. Just seen a tweet here. Delighted and proud to win the columnist of the year.
Was it a feature or something?
Popular newspaper category.
Okay.
So he left it in the back of a taxi. So he's
Oh my God! Actually, I did see before I went out at 8 o'clock. I saw that Rosita Boland, isn't it? won an award for. Do you remember in May?
Yeah,
the piece on and Lovett's ex-boyfriend, which was a really powerful, very long piece of journalism, a real profile of a guy who had never. Yeah, very strong. So I think she won Best Feature. You know, I definitely saw that on Twitter before I went out.
I think scoop of the year.
Yeah,
I suppose it was, because I mean,
that was the
award.
Yeah.
So there were awards that you were overlooked again, John. Is it? What is Broadsheet actually doing or not doing? Why have you been? Well, probably doing something right if you're being ignored in such a national level.
We're just not hot. That's the point. That's the problem, Johnny. And that's
are you falling between stools? I've actually wondered sometimes.
I hope you're not dragging you down.
No.
For example, say the Journal. You know, when you listen to what's on in the newspapers in the morning, they never actually bother with online stuff. So
yeah,
it's funny, you know.
They don't at all.
You're ignored, John.
Well, more of this kind of marginalization, but I think, you know, that's just the way it is, isn't it? I mean, like we talk about Mick and Claire not being mentioned on the Morris documentary, and you know, and Ming not getting any kind of airplay, and he really should, because a lot of the stuff he's coming out with is brilliant, and Dermot is doing a great job. And
well, you're never recognized as a prophet in your own time, isn't that what to say?
Well, but welcome to Olga Cronin, who's just come in from Shift in Dublin. Hello, Olga.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
Yeah, Olga.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I've just put up the papers, so I'm not sure if Neil is equipped to share the controls. Yeah. Oh, Jesus, where's Neil gone?
Oh.
Okay. We seem to have Neil.
Would you put them up, John?
You know, I post them. Can you share them with the?
Yeah, no problem. I'll just get them there now. And
sorry about that. I think I ejected Neil by mistake. I just wanted to give him share him the control, or share the controls with him. But
I didn't realize you had an eject button. You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, I know.
It's like the red chair
in my DB5, you know. So.
Yeah, Graham Norton's chair.
Sorry, Don, taking a bit of time there.
No problem at all.
We just have the Examiner, I think, is it?
Yeah, that's the only Irish paper, but the English papers are quite interesting because of the Brexit stuff, I guess.
Yeah, so the Examiner, the front page there, the main story is defend Brexit deal from collapse. So this is Simon Coveney calling on hardline Brexiteers to actually read the deal, because I guess there was a raft of resignations today and possibly more tomorrow. So that's that. I haven't read that story now, John. Like I've always
no problem at all.
There's a story in the right by Cormac O'Keefe.
I think Theresa is going to survive all this, but
I do too.
What's that takes the?
Nobody wants to take it on. Sorry, the story on the right by Cormac O'Keefe. DPP takes first purchase of sex case. So it's a story by Cormac O'Keefe, and basically the DPP has ordered the first prosecution under new laws criminalising the purchase of sex. Apparently this is supposed to come before the court. So 2 men have been charged under Section 25 of the Criminal Law, Sexual Offences Act, regarding the payment for sexual activity with a prostitute, and that's going to come before the courts in December, I think it says. I think it said in a couple of weeks. So that's the first time.
Is that the first in Ireland ever, Olga?
Apparently, yeah. It's just this new law that... so yeah, I'm just trying to. It's hard to read because it's actually quite fuzzy. Details of the first prosecution under the new provision were revealed in a report from the Garda Commissioner to the Policing Authority. The October report by Drew Harris, the Garda Commissioner, said directions from the DPP were received in September 2018, directing that criminal proceedings be commenced against 2 individuals for these offences. So yeah, I think it is. Unless it happened a long time ago and then it stopped and now it's just been brought in. But yeah, this is the first time proceedings have been directed under this legislation. So,
okay.
Luhama has welcomed it. There's a story in the middle there. Darcy award amounts driving premiums up. So there was an Oireachtas Finance Committee meeting today, and Michael Darcy, the minister, has hit back at accusations that little has been done about the cost of insurance. So he's just saying that it's the premiums are still remaining high because of the amounts awarded for compensation, or because of compensation. So so there's that. I can't really read it because it's quite blurry. multimillionaire's pursued for suspected tax avoidance by Fiach O'Connor.
That's okay. No, that's fine. You're coming to them as fresh. I wanted to, Kieran, while you were there, the journalists that we were talking about some alternative awards in our own heads, myself and Olga today, like some of the people like Ken Fox, Olga.
Ken Fox, I thought it would
guy.
Yeah. He was on your program a few weeks ago, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's brilliant.
He's done amazing
he's
work.
Brilliant, and he's so generous with his time and with his, guidance. I think for people who want to get into that kind of journalism, to go down there. But also, I was thinking Colin Farrell. I thought he was finally going to get an award. Yeah.
Did he not? See, I haven't seen the list yet either, Olga, so I don't know.
Oh, sorry, no.
But Connell has done amazing work on the Tune Babies, hasn't he? And
extraordinary.
And not just them, actually, which is important to say that he's looking at other homes all across the country. That's often forgotten, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Powerful work on them.
And also, I was thinking that it might have been nice if they had. I mean, I know the way it works is that you submit several articles, and there is apparently an independent panel now that decides who gets the award for each category. But I thought it would have been nice if maybe someone like Alison O'Reilly, Philip Boucher-Hayes, John Kearns or Jumbo from the Mirror, just people who kind of came forward during the tribunal, especially after the week and the documentary about Maurice McCabe, it might and people who would have helped that. I think it would have been nice if they were acknowledged, but I guess it's a bit of a difficult one.
We were talking about that a little bit earlier, actually.
Yeah. So, but that just ran through my head. I thought tonight that perhaps people who
maybe because of all the great journalists that have been doing all this good work aren't being recognised. That's almost a recognition in itself. There's some kind of STEM developing here, like that. The real journalists are all in with the one. So you're in good company.
Well, no, I mean it's not like it doesn't have to be a black or white or either or. It's just that I thought that, I just thought it might have been a nice occasion to perhaps recognise what they did. Just because.
And Mick Clifford already also did a lot on telling Morris's story before this week.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Well, it's just a lot
bringing a book out last year.
Yeah.
Was he even mentioned in Morris's documentary, by the way? Okay.
Mick Clifford, I don't believe so. No.
I don't think so. Actually, either. No.
No, I mean, I think to be fair to Katie Hannon and their team, I thought the documentary did a really. I mean, I don't know what you guys thought of it, but I thought it did a brilliant job of getting the story into the homes of people across Ireland in a really clear and, understandable way. And sure, there were things and definitely people who weren't mentioned, who could have been mentioned. But I just think it's such a complicated, so many strands, spans so many years, and so many things were happening at the same time. Like, for example, I think in the documentary, like it didn't, let's say, talk about Paul Williams' articles at a time when perhaps it would have been kind of pivotal at a time when other things were happening which were being mentioned, like the Sean Gearan report. And even then, this is at the time that the false rape allegation suddenly had a new life. So there were definitely details that could have kind of been fleshed out, but I think she would have just lost the audience. So I think
Kieran thought it was a terrific bit of work. I didn't, as I said, I didn't actually watch it, but
Johnny, exactly as you said, Olga, more or less the same, on its own terms. Like I remember that week when Paul Williams had that series in the Irish Independent, and I was in the Connacht Tribune at the time at lunchtime every day, reading it kind of in shock and kind of going, where is this coming from? Where is this going? You know what I mean? And there were hatchet jobs done on them from different angles at different times. But I just thought, in terms of him and his wife telling their story, which had to be told, that Katie did a great job at that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she probably let them have a look at it before it came out and everything, because it had to be done on their terms. Because God, I mean, I've said it to people, thanks be to God that man had strong mental health, because that kind of those kind of rumors, I mean, you could, the unthinkable could happen, because and they mentioned that themselves, It
was very good to see Lorraine McCabe. He talked about being dignified, like, when you see her going through Dublin Castle, you just know that she carried herself very well. Extremely. And like, you know, that she was his backbone, like, you know, and he you know, it was very, very sad when she said, like, you know, that he had picked out a tree that he was going to hang himself from. You know, that really hit home. And like, he, you know, if he didn't have her, you know, and she, you know, it's amazing, like, you know, the power of someone, just one person that can support you. It says an awful lot, like, you know, and that kind of really rang true. I thought that was the most powerful thing of it. I
thought the old video footage, I mean, you know, a lot of trouble went into it. Yeah. The video of their wedding and how her friend said, you know, she was like, oh my God, thank God that day is over, because she was so shy and didn't want to be the center of attention. And now look at her. I mean, the strength that she's drawn from to be able to stand up and do a 2-hour, you know, 2-night documentary on national TV about what the two of them have gone through. I mean, the strength that they have found within themselves has been incredible.
It's funny. There's I may have mentioned it before. I certainly mentioned it to Olga before, that there's a book by Peter Charlton about lying. You know, he published some years ago, but he writes about the victims of people like Morris, people who were caught in the spotlights, but you know, fighting injustice. And he said that they reach a state of transcendence, that it's almost like, you know, you can't believe that somebody could go through what they've gone through. And you know, you could see that through Dublin Castle. You know, people arriving at Dublin Castle, there was a certain modesty about Lorraine and Morris that a lot of them didn't possess. You know,
very true.
But
very obvious, yeah.
It's amazing what you can do with a slow motion camera now as well, you know. RT got that years ago. They're really utilising it.
It was really beautifully shot, and the music and everything. And but you mentioned the coverage or the footage. I just thought it was lovely. Even the first part where, you know, there was footage of him in Templemore, and you know, just when he was like, you could see he was just loving it and so excited to be a guard, and you know, he was just like, this is it. This is what I wanted to do all my life.
The fact that he went to as a kid, that he forced his dad to drive across the country to go to the funeral of a guard that they didn't know. I mean, that he knew at that stage he wanted to be a guard. What a story, you know what I mean? And it's kind of what a reflection on our country, that he's not running the police or right up at the top, that he's not at the top of the career ladder, given how, you know, that's not the way this works in this country, you know what I mean? And I mean, I followed it and that, but I didn't know all the details about the house where the suicide was, and the three guards turned up drunk off duty in a place that was where something had happened, driving a car, you know. It was such incredible stuff. Like,
yeah, well, on that as well, I think there was 2 loose ends that I found, and sorry, Olga, you probably covered this, so I apologize.
No, this is the thing. This is why the documentary was so good, because I think there was so much. People really did find it hard to kind of have it in their head. So I think Katie did a brilliant job with that. Sorry, Johnny.
Exactly, Olga. Sorry, Johnny, but it's their story. It's not the story of what journalists were doing to them, or the big thing that was swirling around them. It was them in the middle of this storm. You know what I mean?
The 2 things then, that if RT really want to follow up, rather than say we've done that, let's move on. There is still 2 loose ends as far as I'm concerned. The guard that was part of those 3 drunken guards seemed to have carried on the vendetta against him, because it was him who.
Well,
Johnny, I know he's the father of Miss G, but I mean,
but you know, who is he? Is he still a guard? And also, who's the TUSLA employee that administered the letter to Morris McCabe, calling him a paedophile?
Well,
Sorry,
I mean, the TUSLA matter is really 2 parts. The TUSLA story is 2 parts. There was a mistake. Everyone agrees that the initial mistake was a mistake. But the fact that it suddenly took a life in early 2014, in May 2014, or April 2014, around the time of the Paul Williams articles, around the time Miss D went to GSOC to complain, and GSOC found that there was nothing wrong with the investigation, around the time of the Sean Gearan report, that's the second part of the TUSLA story. And Charlton could not find out why that suddenly was taken out of a cabinet and sent to the guards, and then sent all the way up to the top of the commissioner, to the Guard HQ, as a false allegation sent up by Gardaí who knew it was false but never corrected it. And so even when an assistant commissioner got an actual document saying, oh, we made a mistake, he still didn't, we're told, give that to Noreen O'Sullivan. So the Tuesday story is in two parts. And Charlton said he was disappointed that he couldn't get a proper answer from TUSLA as to why that happened. But he did say that it wasn't a coincidence. And he just basically said that TUSLA, there was a sense of there was unfinished business with McCabe. And that's because the file was like a live file, but Morris had never been told about it. So, you know, things had to happen. Again, without getting too confusing. And so eventually what happened was, that was 2014, but it didn't, so if you tick all the way around to December of 2015, that's when a social worker sent this letter to Morris saying, we are investigating you for rape. And then he wrote back, his solicitor wrote back and said, that's absolutely what the hell. And it took them 6 months to get back and say, sorry about that. But they didn't explain, they didn't explain what had happened, they didn't explain. And that's why in the documentary where Katie explained that that's when he demanded to get his full file that TUSLA had on him. And then it took him, I think he didn't get that until following January 2017. And that's really the reason why they demanded a tribunal, a public tribunal, because he had gone through the O'Higgins Commission investigation in 2015 when that allegation was live, sitting in the Garda Commissioner's office. So during that whole time of the commission, that was ongoing and he had no idea. So that's why when it came to January 2017, and he met, if you remember, he met Catherine Zappone and all of that, and remember Enda Kenny, and there was all this hullabaloo. So that's when he demanded a public tribunal, because they weren't prepared to go down the route of a private commission trying to understand what had happened, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's very interesting. I was reading back over news reports of Morris's appearance before PAC. You know, the first. It's very, very, very interesting reading. You know, like, he better be careful. You know, that kind of like. He's taking on the. You know. The big guns here, you know. Well,
you know, it's interesting. Like, I know you mentioned probably Claire and Mick not being mentioned in the documentary and all the rest, but it's funny how in the documentary we were shown how Micheál Martin, the leader of Fianna Fáil, putting on the record something that was said to Morris by the confidential recipient. So when you're a guard, back then, when you were a guard and you wanted to make a complaint within the guards, you went to the confidential recipient. So Morris had gone to the confidential recipient about Oliver Connolly. And he taped the conversation. And if you remember in the documentary, there was a clip where Micheál Martin read out a bit of a transcript of that. And it basically said, you know, if Alan Shatter thinks you're going, or whatever, he's going, you know, he's going to get you. He's going to get you. So, but it should be said that Alan Shatter was found later on that he acted accordingly and everything. But this was said in the Dáil by Micheál Martin, and that clip in the documentary was shown from 2014. But in actual fact, Mick Wallace had said the same thing back in December 2012, which is when, like, Paul Williams was named in the Dáil, a judge was named in the Dáil, Ronan O'Gara was named in the Dáil, all by Luke Ming Flanagan, Claire Daly, Joan Collins, and Mick Wallace. And it's really interesting, if you go back, they were all trying to discuss it on December 4th, 2012, during a household charge debate. And I mean, they were completely on their own. You know, they were, you know, and I mean, power to John McGuinness, Fianna Fáil later on, but like, it is interesting to go back, because you can remember, you know, like watching it all.
Yeah, I was saying to Johnny that Morris going, it's like your favorite band going mainstream, you know, like the Smiths. Suddenly, your older brother likes them, and it's like, Christ, you know, this is not on, you know. I like them when you were calling them miserable.
Yeah, but I have to say, I really dislike the whole. Having said all that, maybe this doesn't make sense, but I don't like the whole, like, oh, who was first and who was there and who wasn't. Yeah, because it's all very petty and horrible, you know, like this, you know. But I did think, like, you know, I did wonder, because there was such an outpouring of support for Morris after the documentary, which is great. It did make me wonder, though, gosh, if half or a third of what was shown in the documentary, without going into the business of the tribunal, was shown, it would be interesting to know what journalists might have come forward or what they might have said in the tribunal if it was shown before the tribunal.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I think
this have prompted people to.
Of course, it couldn't have been Olga.
Yeah,
no.
It couldn't have been.
No. There's still a lessons to be learned, I suppose, Olga, outside of the tribunal itself, in relation to just the moral fibre of Garda Síochána, for one, the media, number two, and the government, number three, because they were all there, not on trial per se, but they were all exposed in relation to their shortcomings. So, like, in that regard, and I'm not saying whether she is or not, but, you know, it's kind of dodgy now that someone like Noreen O'Sullivan should have such a strong job, unquestionable, on the back of that. Because if she didn't know, it's very kind of, you know, it doesn't sit well for someone not having that kind of knowledge in her position.
Absolutely.
I mean, for the UN Security Council job, you know, that sounds a bit ludicrous, really.
Well, yeah, because I mean, she received the fake rape allegations. She says she doesn't remember receiving it, and also she says that she was never corrected on it. But also, it should be remembered that she was in HR in 2008, and she would have known the Miss D allegation. So when she received the fake rape allegation, it should have sent off alarm bells for her. And so obviously that was May 2014. And so when it came to the commission investigation, you would have thought that this would have been on her mind, you know, because she was talking about putting everything before the commission investigation. And if the Miss D allegation was something that was supposed to have motivated Maurice's complaints, this was the kind of thing that was being put around, and it was eventually found to be, this was a mistake, blah, blah, blah. But if she was willing to let that go, you would think that she would remember that she had seen something that had accused him of rape. So anyway, look,
yeah,
it's all very complicated. But I think, you know, Johnny, like, there's so many lessons to be learned. And I suppose the truth is the most, is the, you know, for the whole of Maurice's, I guess, that whole horrible experience, like, he was just up against it each time because he was trying to tell the truth. And I guess everyone, all of us need to remember that telling the truth is important. No?
Yeah.
Sorry, that sounded a bit wishy-washy, but
balance is sanction, isn't that?
Well, nobody likes to be vilified. Nobody likes to be called a rat in any kind of occupation. You know what I mean?
No.
Nobody likes to be vilified, and it takes great bravery to stand up and stand for the truth in the first place. But God, he paid an awful price for an awful long time. But thanks be to God, he's come out the other side.
And his family, like, not just him, you know.
Yeah.
You know, even going to the football match after years, and you know, just not being fearful of just what people might say to him.
Yeah, that was really powerful.
You know, small things like that were so pivotal in the document.
Another thing, Olga, hadn't he great foresight at a particular point to record a particular conversation, which was incredible, and changed the whole course of it. Remind me a little bit of, if you're familiar with the massacre in Northern Ireland that became the No Stone Unturned documentary.
Oh yeah, the Loch Island.
Yeah, the father of somebody I know who lives in Galway was a SDLP councillor, and he gave information to the RUC, which disappeared. And he's an elderly man now, but thanks be to God, he had the foresight to make a second copy and put it somewhere else, and they didn't know that they had another copy. So people like him and Morris, who are questing for the truth, somehow, somewhere, they have this kind of foresight, you know, because Morris had no idea what kind of stuff was being said about him, you know, but it was great foresight to do that, you know.
Absolutely.
And even the cartoon there today, you know, not all superheroes. You know, that's so inspiring for especially young people that are in school, you know, because the whole whistleblower thing, it still has a stigma, you know, squealer, this kind of thing, you know, but we need, this country needs whistleblowers, and it just goes to show you the power of one is amazing, that if you believe in something strong enough, you know. But Maurice McCabe is a very clever man, you know, and he had to work very hard to get the result that he deserved. But what happens now is very pivotal, that people will look up to Maurice McCabe. And on Garda Síochána, you know, they have to do it in their own small way of showing their support for him. And fair play to Drew Harris, he did go and thank him personally, and he did say that he made a big difference. So you can't renege on stuff like that. So it was amazing in relation to the documentary did its job, but
yes,
can't be just shelved there now. It needs to be looked at in relation to Maurice McCabe as an example for truth and honesty and transparency in this country, and that's amazing considering everything that we went through in a few years. That
well, I think we're going to need
this one.
We're certainly going to need a more detailed look at Maurice's story from, you know, not just sort of not the emotional aspect or the what he went through, but the actual details of it, and the Tussle stuff as well. I think Olga is.
And the civil action against Callanan as well. That's
yeah, of course. Well, I don't.
But I think, you know, go back to what we were talking about and the mainstream and the independence, either media or whatever. It was a very dignified documentary telling the story of the family, and it's probably better in a way. Maybe it hasn't told the whole story that it didn't go through, which. Independent. Okay, it's wrong that people have been airbrushed out of the story who stood by him when nobody else did. But it wasn't important to go who did this time, who stood by him first. You know, which reporters did that. It wasn't about them exactly, Olga. Yeah.
Okay. Well, on that note, Kieran, thank you so much for joining us.
All right.
It's been a very low key night, but you've been fantastic. It's been fascinating to hear you on all subjects. Thanks a lot, Kieran.
Okay. Thank you.
Blogger of the year, Kieran Tierney, and you can get him on. KieranTierneyblogspot.com, is it?
KieranTierney.blogspot.ie in Ireland, actually.
.ie. Okay. Oh, sorry.
I did a new one tonight about Ming's conference. So
brilliant.
Before it went out, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Well, we'll put that up on the site in the morning as well. Kieran, thank you so much for joining us. Johnny Keenan from Kilkenny, great to have you back. Thank you tonight. Olga Cronin. A little bit late tonight. We wanted to talk more about the documentary, but we'll get maybe next week and stuff. Thanks a lot. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think Vanessa wanted to say something there.
Oh, sorry, Vanessa. I was going to say, and celebrity counter Vanessa Foran.
Oh, I can't hear you, Vanessa.
Sorry. I was actually just going to mention about all the stuff with Maurice that actually all took place in his place of work. So, rather, you know, we all think about it's all about, you know, the journalists and who did what and who said what, but this all took place in his place of work, and I think that tends to get forgotten about with all the scandal in the tribunal.
Yeah.
Can you imagine going in and out to work every day? It's just awful.
Yeah.
Well, that might be a reason why he retired as well, like.
Oh yeah, imagine. Is he actually technically he no longer works for the guards now? Olga.
Gone. Yeah.
He's gone now. That's it. Everything's nice.
Yeah.
Do you know what he might get up to or what?
I don't know. I think he's just going to maybe take some time and, you know, I think just kind of catch up with his family, I guess. You know.
Fishing.
But yeah, I'm not too sure. Fishing. Yeah.
That was a nice clip as well on the lake.
Yeah, yeah, John, it ended with him on the lake with his son and his brother.
All right.
Near his house. And he just mentioned he just said it's been a long, you know, he said, I missed all this for years because I was wrapped up in all the other stuff. And, you know, because it was something that he did, I think, a lot as a kid in the family hotel, his father's hotel and all this. Yeah,
well, okay, thanks a lot, Olga, and thanks everybody, and thanks for everybody for watching, and we'll hopefully see you on the site tomorrow or here next week. Thanks so much, everybody.